Peter Brown.
Kevin Van Ord.
We saw a fascinating game today, and we both saw it, and we both wanted to talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
I'm talking about, of course, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, or as we call it, Revengeance, because it's important to add as many syllables as you can. But now I played a little bit more, and I did see some I did have a behind-the-scenes talk with the developers that you didn't have. So hopefully we can sort of fill in this picture together.
Yeah.
So let's start with the beginning of the demo, the first part of the demo that we both played. What were your thoughts? Describe kind of what was going on there.
So initially, they introduced the mechanic where you went into like sword time or blade time. I forget what it was called. Sword mode, maybe? And from there, you had control over your blade, where you would move the analog stick, not in a direction that you wanted to slice, but where you put it was where your slice would begin.
Right.
And then the guy quickly informed me that you can actually, you don't have to use that mode, you can just hit square and triangle to slice even faster. So you have this duality of just chaos or very precise slices, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a combination. You can do regular old action by just pressing the usual buttons, the usual suspects in that case. But then by pulling a trigger, then of course you go into this whole mode and everything slows down and you have very precise actions. It's interesting. I wanted to talk about the feel of that slicing for a minute, because there's something interesting and sort of lacking impact in it. It's almost like it's the sharpest blade ever made, because it literally feels like you're slashing air, and there just happens to be something in your way.
Now, did you find that more with the deliberate slash versus the chaotic slash?
It's interesting because the normal slash, the normal action game slash, actually felt like it had more impact than the actual whoosh.
Yes.
And I think that's interesting, and I also think it's just sort of the nature of what they're doing. If you want to be able to slash anything, not every, it's got to be the sharpest blade ever made, right? This katana that he's using.
Yep.
But then there's more. So then you start to sort of combine these things together, and you realize that there are combos, and there are times where you get a chance for sort of a quick timey event.
Yes.
And in one of those cases, you sort of fly into the air, and you've got the dude beneath you, or under, above you, or what have you, depending on the circumstance, and then you slash. And it's sort of, the game sort of puts you into this position where you have to use that sword mode.
Now, the one thing about the sword mode, I guess we didn't really touch on yet, is when you use that and an enemy is sort of low on health, you can press B to rip out their spine and restore some of your energy. So in that sense, I think that deliberate slash is almost limited to when you need to recharge your health, or if you're at a boss where you need to do that.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's good. It's not really required all the time, because the game really is very quick.
It is very quick, and I would actually find it very boring to kind of pull off that same move over and over again.
Stop the action.
Just playing it, you realize that when you're in the move, when you're in the groove, you don't want to just constantly stop it. Sometimes you just want to keep the combos going.
Yeah.
And that part was actually fun. And then we both played the bit with the gecko. So the big mooing gecko drops in. And how did you deal with the gecko?
It wasn't too difficult, I got to be honest. I basically I went in, I jumped up, and I slashed my heart out until he was decimated.
And that's pretty much all you had to do. In my case, there's a rocket launcher sort of sitting right there, a missile launcher.
Right.
You can pick it up, and you can use one of the bumpers to aim, and then you fire it off. And that sort of did the trick for me. And then when he was down, I just ran up and slashed, and he was done in basically one hit.
Yeah.
But then the part that I played that you missed was there's a spot where you have to run real fast, and you sort of cross this collapsing bridge, and it was a little uncomfortable at first because there's this big camera shift, and suddenly you're sort of doing a platforming thing where the camera is fixed where it hadn't been before, and then there's this helicopter fight, and I think that they may have shown this before. You were talking about
it was in a video. They had demoed it,
and it's sort of the same thing. There's some missile launchers around. You can use the missile launcher to bring it down, and it comes down, and then I can run up and slash at it a few times, and at the very end there's a quick time sort of event where you run across the missiles that the helicopter is shooting at you until you go up to it and slash it. Very Metal Gear-ish in that sense, kind of over the top, and like that would never really happen. It actually is kind of more Devil May Cry,
I
guess, than it is Metal Gear.
Yeah, but let's talk about that for a moment, because I think we both agreed that this game is not a Metal Gear game. It really doesn't have the same tone. I mean, it's very, very different, and I think obviously that's got to do a lot with Platinum, no doubt.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And I asked them about this. What are they doing to make this seem like a Metal Gear game, even though it doesn't play like a Metal Gear game that we've ever played?
Yeah.
And what their reaction was really, it's about the story.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to make sure it was the story that was making it feel most like Metal Gear, because the mechanics themselves are nothing like Metal Gear as we know it.
I will say this though, I did a little bit of exploring beyond the main objective, not very far, but it seemed you could get pickups or perhaps risk unveiling an enemy by slashing boxes. They had the cardboard box.
Oh yes, they
all
did
over
have
the
the cardboard box, and a dude could be inside.
Or a health pickup
right?
or something.
But
yeah.
you can't. You have to use the sword slash in this case. You can't just bash on the box because it's not doing anything when I did it.
Okay.
You actually had to enter the sword mode and do this when there was a dude inside.
I see. Okay.
Because you have to do that in 2 of the different places at least, beyond just going out and exploring. And the whole thing just ended up coming together. I think we both agreed it felt incredibly fluid.
Yes.
There's a little bit of, I don't want to call it learning curve, but you sort of have to reteach your brain how the controls function when you go into sword mode.
Yeah.
Because you're used to the camera movement, with the analog stick, and suddenly you go into sword mode, and suddenly everything changes. Hey, now the camera's the other stick, and now the, slashing is this stick. So there's a little bit of that, hey, my brain has to switch whenever I go into the mode, but super easy to get used to.
It's all about muscle memory. Once you get it down, I think it'll be pretty simple for most people to pick up.
But it felt really good. It's a platinum game. We sort of expected that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm a huge fan of of Metal Gear, and I'm not dismayed in the least because it doesn't feel like a Metal Gear game, because it's just a fun game. You know what I mean? It just so happens to be a Metal Gear title.
Yeah, and I think the smart thing is we have Raiden
Yeah.
there. And I mean, Raiden may not be the most popular character in Metal Gear.
True, right.
But I think that's what makes him maybe the best fit for this game. Because
Absolutely,
if he doesn't
yeah.
feel like a fit for old Metal Gear, then maybe he's the right fit for new.
I couldn't see it being anyone else.
Yep. So, Peter, thanks for joining me, and
Thank you.
I'm glad we had a chance to talk about Revengeance. We'll be writing up more, so go out, watch some more E3 stuff. Have a great time.